Chapter 1. The Quiet Cracks. I built my life the same way. I built buildings slow, measured, reinforced at every load-bearing point. Nothing decorative without purpose. Nothing emotional without discipline. My name is Marshall Ramsey. I'm 46 years old, former Navy SEAL, founder and CEO of Ramsey Structural Group. I've stood in deserts where mistakes get people killed and boardrooms where they just cost money. Both taught me the same lesson. Preparation beats panic every time. That belief carried me through everything: combat, business, marriage. Or so I thought. On paper, my life looked indestructible. A 40-acre property on the edge of town. A glass and steel house I designed myself. A wife who didn't need to work. A daughter whose future had been funded before she learned to read. Order, stability, control. But structures don't fail all at once. They crack quietly first. It started small. Almost nothing. Tricia coming home later than usual, claiming traffic without annoyance. Her phone face down on the counter, always within reach. The way she'd tilt the screen away when a notification buzzed. Little things most men dismiss because they don't want to seem paranoid. I noticed because paranoia kept me alive once. One night, I asked casually, "Who keeps texting you so late?" She didn't look up from the stove. "Just friends." Friends. Plural. Vague. Unsecured. I nodded and didn't push. Pressure 2 early collapses weak structures before you see where they're failing. Dinner tasted fine. Chicken, rosemary, something expensive she'd seen online. She talked about renovations she wanted, trips we should take someday. Her words were there. Her presence wasn't. She laughed half a second too late. Touched my arm like she was following choreography. I cataloged it all and said nothing. Emma noticed first. She always did. Our daughter was 12, small for her age, dark hair usually tied back tight, eyes that missed nothing. She didn't interrupt conversations. She listened. The way she asked questions reminded me uncomfortably of debrief rooms. One Saturday morning, we sat at the kitchen island while Tricia slept in. Emma stirred her cereal slowly, watching the milk ripple. "Dad," she said, not looking at me. "Why do people lie when telling the truth would be easier?" I paused my coffee halfway to my mouth. "Depends," I said carefully. "Sometimes lying feels safer." "Is it?" she asked. I studied her face. Calm. Curious. No drama. Just a probe. "Short term," I said. "Long term, lies rot things from the inside." She nodded like she'd already decided that was correct. Another crack. Tricia used to wake up early with me. We'd drink coffee in silence, her feet tucked under my leg, my hand resting on her ankle. That stopped. Now she slept late, or claimed insomnia, or left early to run errands without telling me where. One evening, I came home earlier than planned. The house was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. Tricia's car was in the driveway. I found her in the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, phone pressed to her ear. She jumped when she saw me. Wrong number," she said too fast and ended the call. I leaned against the doorframe. "Everything okay?" She smiled. "Tight. Of course." Her eyes didn't meet mine. In the mirror behind her, I saw my own reflection, still unreadable, waiting. I kissed her forehead and left the room. That night, Emma brushed her teeth beside me at the sink. Foam dripped down her chin. She wiped it away and said, "Mom's acting weird." Children don't guess. They observe. "She's stressed," I replied. Emma rinsed, spit, and looked up at me. People act weird when they think they're getting away with something. I turned off the faucet slowly. "Where'd you hear that?" I asked. She shrugged. "Books. And watching people." Another crack. The next week, I worked 14-hour days. Concrete pours don't care about personal problems. Steel deadlines don't pause for intuition. But even buried in work, patterns stood out. Tricia stopped asking about my projects. Stopped checking my schedule. When I told her I'd be traveling for 3 days, she didn't react at all. No annoyance. No relief. Just a nod. Absence welcomed, not endured. One night, after she fell asleep, her phone lit up on the nightstand. No sound. Just vibration. I didn't touch it. Trust isn't blind. It's disciplined restraint. You don't violate it without proof. Instead, I lay there listening to her breathing, steady, controlled, practiced, and wondered when it had stopped syncing with mine. Saturday afternoon, I took Emma to the driving range. She hated golf, but loved mechanics. Angles, force, cause and effect. She watched me line up a shot. If you already know where the ball will land, she said, why bother hitting it? I smiled. You never know everything. But you know enough, she replied. So you prepare. She wasn't wrong. On the drive home, she asked, Dad, if someone steals something but says it's for a good reason, is it still stealing? Yes, I said instantly. What if it's for someone they love? I glanced at her. Then it's worse. She looked out the window. Okay, that was the third crack. Wide enough now that I couldn't ignore it. That evening, I found Tricia in the living room scrolling through her phone. I sat across from her, coffee in hand. Hey, I said lightly. When's the last time we looked at Emma's college fund? Her fingers stilled. We don't need to, she said. It's fine. I know it is, I replied. I just like checking. She stood up too quickly. You're always checking things. It's obsessive. That was new. Defensive. Aggressive. I raised an eyebrow. I built that fund since the day she was born. And I'm her mother, she snapped. I think I'd notice if something was wrong. Silence settled between us like dust after a demolition blast. I didn't say something was wrong. I said evenly. She turned away. I'm tired. We'll talk later. Later never comes unless you schedule it. Emma watched the exchange from the hallway, her face unreadable. When Tricia went upstairs, Emma walked over and leaned against the couch. You're not wrong to ask, she said quietly. I know, I replied. She hesitated. Sometimes people don't want you to look because they're afraid of what you'll see. I studied my daughter, the calm posture, the controlled voice, the way she didn't seek reassurance. Go to your homework, I told her. She nodded and left without another word. That night, I stood alone in the kitchen long after the lights were off upstairs. The house was solid. The walls were true. The foundation hadn't shifted an inch, but something inside it had. I felt it the same way I'd once felt incoming fire, before the sound, before the impact. A pressure change. A warning. Something was wrong. And for the first time since I'd learned to survive, I chose not to move yet. Chapter 2. The fun that should never shrink. I didn't bring it up like an accusation. Accusations make people defensive, and defensive people hide things better. I brought it up like routine. Sunday morning. Coffee already brewed. The house quiet in that rare way that feels almost cooperative. Tricia sat at the kitchen island scrolling through her phone, legs crossed, hair still damp from the shower. Emma was upstairs doing homework. At least that's what she'd said. I opened my laptop, logged into my personal dashboard, and said, Hey, I'm updating our financial snapshot this week. Tricia hummed without looking up. I want to review Emma's college fund. I added, like I was asking what we wanted for dinner. That got her attention. She looked up too quickly. Why? I didn't react. Because I do it every year. You already know what's in it. I know what should be in it. Her jaw tightened. Just a fraction. Barely visible unless you were trained to watch micro movements. It's fine, Marshall, she said. You're always worrying about things that don't need worrying. I took a sip of coffee. Humor me. She stood, picked up her mug, and walked to the sink. Back turned. Distance created. I don't have the login info right now, she said. We can check later. That was strike one. I don't need your login, I replied calmly. It's under my master account. She froze. One hand on the counter, the other gripping the mug hard enough that her knuckles whitened. Well, she said after a pause, there's no rush. Strike two. I closed the laptop halfway and looked at her. Is there a reason you don't want me to look? She laughed, sharp, quick, defensive. Don't be dramatic. You're acting like I did something wrong. I didn't answer. Silence is pressure. People feel it when they're uncomfortable. You're never home anymore, she continued. You don't trust me. And now you're interrogating me over money that's already set aside. Strike three. I stood and moved closer, keeping my voice even. Tricia, that fund exists for one reason. Emma, I've contributed to it since the day she was born. Every bonus, every profit quarter, every year. I'm going to look at it. She turned in, eyes flashing. And what if I moved some of it temporarily? What if I needed it? There it was. Not denial. Justification. Needed it for what? I asked. That's not the point, she snapped. It's still ours. No, I said quietly. It's hers. Emma's door creaked upstairs. Footsteps paused, then retreated. She was listening. Of course she was. Tricia crossed her arms. You're making this into something it's not. I reopened the laptop. She reached out instinctively, like she was going to stop me, then caught herself and stepped back. Marshall, don't, she said. You're going to overreact. I logged in. The account loaded slower than usual. Or maybe just felt that way because my pulse had picked up. Balance summary appeared. My brain rejected the number before my eyes did. $23,417.82. I stared at it, waiting for the rest of the digits to populate. For a refresh. A glitch. Something. Nothing changed. That's not right, I said, more to myself than to her. Tricia didn't speak. I clicked into transaction history. Rows of withdrawals filled the screen. Clean. Deliberate. No chaos. No mistakes. $15,000. $22,000. $30,000. $18,500. My jaw tightened. I scrolled. Dates jumped out immediately, not because they were recent, but because they were familiar. March 14th, April 2nd. May 19th, June 7th. Every single one lined up with a business trip. Every single one. I leaned back slowly, chair legs scraping softly against the floor. How much is gone? I asked. She swallowed. I don't know. I turned the laptop so she could see the total withdrawals highlighted in blue. $156,582.18. You don't know. I repeated flatly. She looked at the screen, then away. I meant to tell you. When things settled. They settled, I said. The money didn't. Her voice rose. I was going to put it back. With what? I asked. You don't have income. She opened her mouth, closed it, then said, You make plenty. That was the moment. Not the missing money. Not the lies. That sentence. You make plenty. As if effort negated entitlement. As if discipline created obligation. As if Emma's future was a flexible resource. I stood up. You authorized every one of these withdrawals. Yes, she said. I'm on the account. You were trusted on the account. She crossed her arms again. You're acting like I stole it. I met her eyes. You did. Her face hardened. It was temporary. Temporary theft is still theft. She scoffed. Don't be ridiculous. I scrolled further, opening authorization logs. Each withdrawal had her digital signature. Each one done during windows where she knew I wouldn't be reachable. Precision. Planning. This wasn't impulse. This was strategy. Emma appeared at the kitchen entrance, silent as always. Is everything okay? She asked. Tricia turned too fast. Go upstairs. Emma didn't move. She looked at the laptop screen, then at me. How much is left? She asked. I didn't answer right away. Tricia snapped. That's none of your business. It's my money, Emma said evenly. The room went quiet. I closed the laptop gently. Go back upstairs, Em. She hesitated, then nodded and left, but not before looking at her mother with something unreadable in her eyes. When she was gone, I faced Tricia again. You planned this, I said. Her voice trembled, not with guilt, but with anger. You don't know what I planned. I know enough, I replied. She paced now, hands her hair. You control everything. I just took control of something for once. That something wasn't yours. She stopped pacing. You're overreacting. No, I said calmly. I'm reacting exactly enough. I reopened the laptop one last time and stared at the screen, not at the balance, but at the pattern. Timing. Access. Intent. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't panic. This was betrayal, calculated down to the calendar. I shut the laptop and stood there, the weight of it settling fully for the first time. Nearly $180,000 gone. Barely $23,000 left. Withdrawals aligned perfectly with my absence. The numbers didn't just tell a story. They confirmed what my instincts already knew. Betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was undeniable. Chapter 3, The Man Who Knows Too Much. I didn't call him angry. Anger clouds judgment. I called him curious. The name came easily enough, Alex Riley. Tricia mentioned him once in passing weeks earlier, tucked casually into a sentence about a real estate contact who'd helped a friend find an investment property. The kind of name that slides by unnoticed if you aren't listening for weight. I was listening now. I sent a short, polite email from my business account, interested in discussing potential development opportunities. Coffee? Neutral. Professional. Non-threatening. He replied within minutes. We met downtown at a glassfront cafe overlooking the river. High visibility. Public. A place where people perform rather than confess. Alex arrived 10 minutes early and stood when he saw me, hand already extended, smile calibrated. Marshall Ramsey, he said warmly. Good to finally meet you. Finally. I noted that and shook his hand. His grip was firm but practiced, not strong, just convincing. He wore a tailor blazer over an open collar shirt, hair styled to look effortless, shoes that cost more than they needed to. He knew his audience. We ordered coffee. He insisted on paying. Least I can do, he said. You're kind of a legend around here. I raised an eyebrow. In construction? He chuckled. In everything. I let that pass. We sat. He leaned back comfortably, like this was his space. Like he belonged here with me. So, he said, Trisha tells me you're impossible to pin down. There it was. First personal reference. She talks about me? I asked lightly. All the time, he replied without hesitation. Your travel schedule alone sounds exhausting. I kept my face neutral. It can be. Still, he went on, stirring his coffee. Must be nice having a routine. Gym early. Office by 7. Home late unless you're out of town. My fingers tightened around the mug. That's pretty specific, I said. He laughed. Occupational habit. I notice patterns. I nodded slowly. So do I. He smiled, unfazed. We talked business for a few minutes, surface-level nonsense. He knew the right terms, dropped buzzwords convincingly, but never went deep. It was a performance, not expertise. Then he tilted his head and said, that house you designed, beautiful lines. Minimalist. Smart security layout. I looked at him. You've seen it. Of course, he said. I mean pictures. Trisha showed me. Pictures. Of my house. With a long driveway, he continued, and the glass wall facing the trees. Emma must love that reading nook upstairs. The room didn't change. The noise didn't stop. But something inside me went perfectly still. My daughter, I said slowly, doesn't appear in any photos I've shared. He blinked. Just once. Too late. Oh, he said smoothly. I just meant Trisha mentioned it. I leaned forward an inch. She mentioned the reading nook? He laughed again, but this time it was half a beat delayed. She's proud of the house. Everyone is, I said. I'm careful about who I let inside it. The word inside landed. He took a sip of coffee, eyes flicking away for the first time. You're very protective. I'm very precise. A pause. Not awkward. Calculated. Alex recovered quickly. Emma's a sharp kid, though. I hear she asks a lot of questions. I stared at him. What kind of questions? I asked. Oh, he said, waving a hand. Smart kid stuff. Schools. Futures. She's got your intensity. That was when I knew. He wasn't guessing. He wasn't speculating. He was remembering. You met my daughter, I said. The smile froze, not gone, just held too long. Well, he said carefully, Trisha and I know. I cut in, my voice flat. Answer the question. He leaned back, exhaled, then shrugged. Briefly. She was home once when I stopped by. Stopped by. My house. My schedule flashed in my mind automatically. Dates, trips, windows of absence. I saw the driveway empty. The alarm codes unchanged. The blind spots I never bothered to close because I trusted the woman who lived there. Alex kept talking, unaware that he'd already lost. She's polite, he said. Quiet. Observant. Takes after you. I didn't blink. How long? I asked. He hesitated. Just long enough. Long enough, he said. I stood up. He followed instinctively. Marshall, this conversation is over, I said. Enjoy your coffee. His confidence cracked then. Hey, there's no reason to be hostile. I leaned in close enough that only he could hear me. You were inside my home, I said calmly. That's reason enough. His smile returned, forced and thin. You're reading into things. No, I replied. I'm reading them correctly. I walked out without shaking his hand. The drive home was silent. No radio. No calls. Just the sound of the road and the weight settling into place. He knew my routine. He knew my daughter. He'd been welcomed into my absence. That night, Tricia was unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. She made dinner and talked about a show she wanted us to watch together, like nothing had changed. Like the ground hadn't shifted under all of us. I watched her closely now, not emotionally, but tactically. Her movements, her tone, the way she checked her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Emma ate quietly, eyes flicking between us. After dinner, Tricia kissed Emma on the head and went upstairs to take a call. The bedroom door closed softly. Emma helped me clear the table without being asked. "Dad," she said quietly as we loaded the dishwasher. "Did you meet him?" I paused. "Who?" "Alex." I turned slowly. "How do you know his name?" She shrugged. I listened. I studied her face. Calm. Controlled. No fear. Just assessment. "Yes," I said. "I met him." She nodded once. "He knows too much." "So, did she?" I dried my hands and said, "Go get ready for bed." She did, but stopped at the hallway and looked back. "Dad," she said softly, "can I show you something later?" I met her eyes. "Yes," I said. She nodded, satisfied, and disappeared down the hall. That night, long after the house went quiet, Emma knocked on my office door and said she had something to show me. Chapter 4, The Recordings. Emma closed my office door behind her with deliberate care, the way someone does when they don't want to be overheard or interrupted. She didn't look scared. She didn't look excited. She looked prepared. "I have something to show you," she said again, quieter now. I gestured to the chair across from my desk. "Sit." She didn't sit. Instead, she reached into the pocket of her hoodie and pulled out her phone. It was an old model, mine actually from 2 upgrades ago. I'd given it to her to play games on. No SIM card, no data plan. A toy? Apparently not. "Before you listen," she said, "you should promise not to stop me." I studied her face. 12 years old. Steady hands. Eyes locked on mine. "Why would I stop you?" I asked. "Because adults interrupt when they hear things they don't like," she replied. That landed harder than it should have. "I promise," I said. She nodded once, then tapped the screen. A list of audio files appeared. Dozens of them, each labeled with a date and time. My chest tightened. "What is this?" I asked, though I already knew. "I started recording Mom's calls 3 weeks ago," Emma said calmly. "When she goes into the bedroom or the garage. I leave my phone near the door." 3 weeks. "Why?" I asked. She met my eyes. "Because she lies differently on the phone." I leaned back slowly. "Emma, do you understand what you're saying?" "Yes," she said. "That's why I did it." She tapped the first file. Tricia's voice filled the room. Low. Intimate. Unmistakably not meant for me. "I told you, he won't notice," Tricia said. "He never checks the accounts himself." My jaw tightened. Alex's voice followed, smooth and amused. "You're sure?" "Of course I'm sure," she replied. "He trusts me. He's always gone. And even if he does look, I'll handle it." Emma watched my face, not the phone. Another file. Another night. "They're almost all business trips," Tricia said. "It's perfect. He can't question anything if he's not here." Alex laughed. "You're ruthless." "I'm practical," Tricia corrected. "This is about our future." I closed my eyes for half a second, then opened them again. I forced myself to keep breathing evenly. Combat training kicked in automatically. Slow inhale, controlled exhale. Emotion later. Information now. Emma swiped to another recording. This one was longer. "I hate pretending," Tricia said. "But once we're out, it won't matter. Colorado's clean. New start. No history." Alex murmured something I couldn't hear clearly. "I'll bring the money," Tricia continued. "Most of it's already moved. The rest just needs time." My hand curled into a fist under the desk. Emma paused the audio. "Dad," she said quietly, "do you want me to stop?" I shook my head. "Keep going." She nodded and pressed play again. Another night. Later. Tricia's voice sharper now. "Don't mention Emma's name like that," she snapped. "She's not stupid." Alex replied. "You said she's a kid." "She is," Tricia said. "But she watches everything." There was a pause. "If Marshall pushes back," Alex said slowly, "you can always remind him how much Emma means to him." My stomach dropped. "What does that mean?" Alex asked. Tricia didn't hesitate. "It means he'll do whatever I need him to do." The room felt colder. Emma's fingers trembled for the first time, just slightly, but her voice stayed even. That's when I started backing everything up. She showed me the screen, cloud storage folders, copied files, timestamps, redundancy, organization. How did you know to do that? I asked. She shrugged. You always say one copy isn't a plan. I swallowed. Another recording played. I'll tell him it's for Emma, Tricia said. College. Private school. Something noble. He won't question it if he thinks it's for her. Alex chuckled. You're good at this. I'll learn from the best, Tricia replied. He built his life on control. I'm just using it. I stood up abruptly and paced to the window. The night outside was quiet, peaceful, completely unaware. Emma let the recording finish before speaking again. There are more, she said. Somewhere she talks about you. Somewhere she talks about me. I turned back. What does she say about you? Emma hesitated. That you'd fall apart if anything happened to me. The words hit like a controlled detonation, small, precise, devastating. She said that. I asked. Emma nodded. Alex asked if that made things risky. And I pressed. She said it made them safer, Emma replied. Because you'd never think she'd use me. I sat back down heavily. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. The recordings ended, but their echoes stayed in the room. Every lie, every calculated pause, every casual theft of trust. Finally, I asked, how long have you been listening to this? Since the first call, Emma said. I didn't understand everything at first, so I wrote things down. Dates, names, places. She pulled a folded notebook from her pocket and set it on my desk. Neat handwriting, bullet points, cross-references, a child's handwriting, an adult's discipline. You shouldn't have had to do this, I said quietly. I know, she replied. That's why I did. I looked at her, really looked at her, and felt something heavier than rage settle in my chest. Not just betrayal, responsibility. Emma gathered her phone and notebook and stood. That's all, she said. I just wanted you to know. She turned to leave, then paused. Dad, yes. She thinks she's smarter than you, Emma said. But she's not. The door closed softly behind her. I sat alone in the office, surrounded by silence and proof. Weeks of recordings. An affair confirmed. A college fund drained. My daughter discussed like leverage. A future planned without me, in Colorado, with another man, funded by theft and lies. But none of that shocked me as much as this. My 12-year-old daughter had seen it coming. She had listened. She had recorded. She had prepared. And while I was still processing betrayal, she had already mapped it. Chapter 5, Professionals, Not Emotions. I didn't confront Tricia. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't sleep. Emotion was noise. Noise got people sloppy. By sunrise, I'd already made 2 calls. The first was to my brother. Omar answered on the second ring. You don't call this early unless someone's dead or about to be. Neither, I said. I need you. There was a pause, just long enough for him to switch gears. Omar had been a Marine before he became a private investigator. Different branch, same instincts. He didn't ask why. He asked how fast. I'll be there by noon, he said. Send me the name. Alex Riley, I replied. And everything he touches. Got it. The second call was to my lawyer. Nick Gilbert had been with me since Ramsey Structural was still bidding on strip malls. Corporate law, asset protection, litigation. Nick didn't posture, didn't bluff, didn't moralize. He handled facts like weapons. I need discretion, I told him. That's assumed, Nick replied. What's the damage? Personal, I said, and potentially criminal. Then don't do anything until I'm in the room with you, he said. I'll clear my afternoon. By the time Tricia came downstairs, I was already dressed for work, coffee finished, face neutral. You're up early, she said. Always am, I replied. She watched me carefully, searching for something, anger, suspicion, weakness. I gave her nothing. Emma ate quietly, eyes on her plate. I'll be late tonight, I said casually. Meetings. Tricia nodded too quickly. Okay. I kissed him on the head before leaving. She looked up at me once, just long enough to confirm something between us, then looked back down. The conference room in my office felt safer than home. Glass walls, white boards, controlled environment. Nick arrived first, setting his briefcase down and studying my face. You look like you're back in uniform, he said. Feels like it, I replied. I need to know how exposed I am. Then start from the beginning, he said. I didn't tell him everything. Not yet. I told him enough. By the time Omar arrived, jacket slung over his shoulder, eyes sharp, Nick was already taking notes. Omar didn't bother sitting. Alex Riley, he said. That's not his birth name. I felt a grim satisfaction. Figures. Omar pulled out a tablet and started scrolling. He's moved 3 times in 5 years. Different states. Same pattern. Affluent suburbs. Recently divorced or independently wealthy women. Always real estate adjacent. Nick leaned forward. Criminal record? Nothing that stuck, Omar said, but plenty that circled. Civil suits. Restraining orders that quietly went away. And gambling debts. I looked at the screen. How bad? Bad enough that he doesn't use banks for certain things, Omar replied. Bad enough that he needs quick cash and doesn't ask questions. Nick exhaled slowly. Predatory. Efficient, Omar corrected. He targets women who think they're smarter than their husbands. That landed. Omar continued. He embeds himself, gains trust, creates urgency, then positions himself as escape. Nick glanced at me. And the money? Most of the withdrawals line up with Alex's known movements, Omar said. Vegas twice. Reno once. Private game in Aspen. I didn't react. I was already past surprise. What about the house? I asked. Omar nodded. He's been there. Multiple times. Neighbors saw his car. Different days. Always when you were out of town. Nick closed his notebook. So we're dealing with theft, fraud, conspiracy, and potentially coercion. Potentially, I said. The door opened quietly. Emma stepped inside. Nick looked up, surprised. Marshall, she stays, I said. Everything. Emma walked to the table and placed her notebook and phone down between us. I organized it, she said. Omar raised an eyebrow. Organized what? Timelines, Emma replied. Calls. Withdrawals. Trips. Lies. She slid the notebook toward him. Omar flipped through the pages, his expression changing with every turn. You did this? Yes. How long? Nick asked gently. Since before Dad checked the account, Emma answered. I wanted proof that didn't depend on memory. Nick looked at me, then back at her. This is thorough. Emma nodded. I color-coded emotional language versus planning language. Omar let out a low whistle. Kid, this is better than half the interns I've worked with. Emma didn't smile. I watched her as the men went through her work, watched the way she stood, calm and detached, like this was an assignment she'd completed, not a family unraveling. You shouldn't have had to do this, Nick said quietly. Emma looked at him. Someone had to. Nick paused, then nodded. Fair enough. Omar tapped the screen. You backed up the recordings? Yes, Emma said. 3 locations. Cloud, flash drive, and Dad's server. I hadn't known that. You accessed my server? I asked. You gave me the password last year, she said. You said never to waste a good resource. I felt something twist in my chest. Pride and grief collided and held. Nick straightened. From a legal standpoint, this changes everything. Intent is clear. Pattern is clear. And Alex Riley is not an innocent third party. Omar added he's sloppy. Thought he was invisible. He's not, I said. Silence settled. Then Nick said, Marshall, you need to decide something right now. I looked at him. What? Do you want justice? He said. Or do you want control? I didn't answer immediately. I looked at Emma instead. She met my gaze without flinching. Control, I said finally. Justice can come later. Nick nodded. Then we proceed carefully. Omar closed his tablet. I'll keep digging. Financial pressure points. Associates. Weaknesses. Emma gathered her notebook. I'll update the logs daily, she said. If anything changes. Nick blinked. Daily. Emma nodded. People make mistakes when they think they're ahead. I leaned back in my chair and studied my daughter, really studied her. Somewhere along the way, while I was building companies and protecting assets, she'd been building something too. Awareness. Discipline. Strategy. This wasn't a reaction. It was an operation. And the most unsettling realization of all wasn't what my wife had done or who she'd done it with. It was this. While I was still deciding how to move, my 12-year-old daughter had already been moving quietly for weeks. Chapter 6, Breaking the Lover. I chose the place for a reason. Not my office. Not his. Not anywhere that carried history or witnesses who mattered. A private lounge above a closed boxing gym, quiet during the day, rented by the hour, cash preferred. The kind of place where men thought they could talk freely because nothing ever happened there. Alex arrived 5 minutes late. He always did. A habit that worked when people were chasing him. Less so when they were waiting. He stopped short when he saw me seated alone at the table. You didn't mention this was, he gestured vaguely. Off-site. I didn't stand. Sit. He hesitated, then did. His smile flickered on, instinctive. Look, Marshall, if this is about Trisha, I think there's been a misunderstanding. I slid a folder across the table. He didn't touch it. I said calmly, you should open that. Alex laughed lightly. You're doing that thing where you try to intimidate me. I'm not trying, I replied. He opened the folder. Photos, screenshots, transaction logs, dates circled in red, casino entries, credit markers, names he didn't recognize, but would soon. Color drained from his face. You hired someone, he said. Yes. This is illegal, he snapped, pushing the folder back like it burned. No, I said. What you did was illegal. This is documentation. He swallowed. You don't understand how this works. I leaned forward an inch. I understand exactly how this works. You're leveraged. Deeply. He scoffed, but it came out thin. You think you can scare me with debts? I said, your creditors already scare you. Silence. I continued, voice even. Vegas. Reno. Aspen. Private tables. Cash advances you couldn't cover. People who don't file paperwork when you miss payments. His hands trembled. He clenched them together to hide it. You don't know them, he said. I don't need to, I replied. They know you. I slid a second folder across the table. Thinner. Meaner. Names. Addresses. Associations. Alex's breathing changed. You talked to them? He asked quietly. Not yet. His eyes snapped up. Yet. I nodded. You're going to do 3 things. In order, I say. He laughed again, desperate now. And if I don't? I looked at him. Then I make introductions. The room felt smaller. The hum of the building's old HVAC filled the silence. First, I said, you return every dollar taken from my daughter's account. Today. I don't have it all, he said immediately. You do, I replied. Liquidate. Borrow. Call in favors. I don't care. And if I can't, you can't, I said. Because if you don't, I release this. I tapped the folder. Alex's shoulders sagged. Second, I continued, you leave the state. Permanently. You don't contact my wife again. Ever. He barked a humorless laugh. You don't get to control. I do. I cut in, because the alternative is you explaining to violent men why their money funded someone else's fantasy. He stared at the table. Third, I said, you end it. Now. He looked up. In what? I slid my phone across the table. Call her. Alex shook his head. She won't believe. She will, I said. Because you'll sound afraid. His jaw tightened. She'll hate me. You should hope that's all, I replied. His hand hovered over the phone. Then he picked it up. I didn't look away. It rang twice. Alex. Trisha answered, breathless, hopeful. He swallowed. We can't do this anymore. What? Her voice sharpened. What are you talking about? I'm leaving, he said. I have to. Leaving where? Anywhere but here. Silence on the line. You promised, she said. You said, I know what I said. He snapped, fear bleeding through. Plans change. What happened, she demanded. Did you talk to him? Alex's eyes flicked to me. No, he lied poorly. This is my decision. You're scared, Trisha said. You're panicking again. I'm done, he said. Don't call me. Don't text me. This is over. She laughed, sharp, disbelieving. You don't mean that. I do, he said. I never should have gotten involved. You can't just... Her voice cracked. We had everything planned. I'm sorry, he said. And for the first time, he sounded like it. I'm gone. He ended the call. The phone sat between us, buzzing once more as she tried to call back. He didn't answer. I stood. Send the money by end of day. I'll know if you don't. Alex looked up at me, eyes hollow. You think this is over? For you? I said. It is. He swallowed. She won't forgive me. I paused at the door. That's not my problem. I left him there, sweating, shaking, alone with his choices. By the time I reached my car, my phone vibrated. A notification. Deposit pending. I drove home in silence. Trisha was waiting when I walked in, pacing the living room, phone in hand. "You talked to him," she accused. "What did you do?" I set my keys down slowly. "I talked to him." "What did you say?" Her voice trembled, but her eyes were sharp. "Searching. I told him to leave," I said. She laughed, hysterical. "You think you can just scare him away?" "I didn't scare him," I replied. "I finished him." Her face crumpled. "You ruined everything." I watch her carefully now, not as a husband, but as a threat assessment. "You chose this," I said. She shook her head, backing away. "You don't understand. He was supposed to be your escape," I finished. Tears spilled now, uncontrolled. "He abandoned me." "Yes," I said. "He did." She sank onto the couch, hands over her face, shoulders shaking. For a moment, just a moment, I saw the woman I'd married. Broken, human, regretful. Then she looked up, and the look in her eyes wasn't defeat. It was calculation. Alex was gone. The money was returning. Her fantasy had collapsed, but the war hadn't ended. Trisha was shattered, but not defeated. Chapter 7. Let her believe she's winning. Trisha asked for the separation 3 days after Alex vanished. She chose a Tuesday evening after dinner when Emma was upstairs and the house felt deceptively calm. She sat across from me at the kitchen island, hands folded, posture rehearsed. She looked tired, but not broken. Controlled. Purposeful. "I think we need space," she said. I didn't answer right away. I rinsed my glass, set it in the sink, and turned back to her. "Space from what?" "From this," she said, gesturing between us. "The tension. The suspicion. You don't trust me anymore." That part was true. "I don't want Emma growing up around resentment," she added. "A separation might be healthier." I watched her closely. No tears. No hesitation. This wasn't grief. It was positioning. "How long?" I asked. "I don't know," she said. "A few months. We'll see." "In the house?" I asked. She inhaled, relieved I'd gone there. "You can stay elsewhere for a bit. It'll be less disruptive for Emma if she doesn't have to move." "Of course it would." I nodded slowly, like I was weighing something difficult. "If that's what you want." Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. She'd expected resistance. She prepared for it. My agreement threw her off for half a second before she recovered. "It is," she said. "I think it's best." "Okay," I replied. The word landed heavier than she expected. "I'll pack some things," I continued. "Find a place." She blinked. That was easy." I met her eyes. "I don't fight losing battles." She smiled faintly, mistaking restraint for surrender. That night, I packed a suitcase. Clothes. Toiletries. Nothing sentimental. I didn't take my watch, my spare laptop, or any of the documents locked in my office. I left them where they were. Emma stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "You're not leaving?" she said quietly. "Not really," I replied. She nodded. "Good." I kissed her forehead and left the house like a man conceding ground. The apartment I moved into was temporary and sparse. 2 rooms, clean lines, nothing personal. Omar installed discreet surveillance within 48 hours. Exterior cameras. Interior motion sensors in common areas. Audio coverage where legally permissible. The house became a controlled environment. Trisha didn't know. For the first 2 days, she played the part well. Calm messages. Polite updates about Emma. A photo of dinner plated neatly, like proof of stability. On the 3rd day, the call started. She called Alex. Once. Twice. 10 times. Voicemails stacked up unanswered. Texts went unread. Her tone shifted from reassuring to pleading to sharp. By the end of the week, desperation bled through everything she did. She stopped pretending. The cameras caught her pacing at night. Phone pressed her ear, whispering angrily. Caught her scrolling through contacts, stopping, starting, stopping again. Caught her sitting at the kitchen table at 2 in the morning, laptop open, papers spread around her like a war map. She went to the bank on Friday. I watched the live feed from my apartment, arms crossed, coffee untouched. She wore a blazer she only used when she wanted to be taken seriously. Hair pulled back tight, expression composed. She approached the counter with a folder and a smile. "I'm here to make a transfer," she said. The clerk nodded. "Account holder?" "Yes," Tricia replied smoothly. "Joint account. My husband's signature is included." She slid a document across the counter. Forgery. Clean but rushed. She practiced my signature for years. Cards, packages, contractors. This time, she'd overplayed it. The clerk examined the paper, frowned slightly, and typed something into the system. "I'll just need verification," the clerk said. Tricia's smile tightened. "Of course." That was when Emma stepped into frame. She hadn't been supposed to be there. Tricia had told her it was a quick errand and left her in the lobby with a book. Emma had followed anyway, quiet as ever. "Mom," Emma said, approaching the counter. "Why are you signing Dad's name?" The clerk looked up. "Excuse me." Tricia's head snapped around. "Emma, go sit down." Emma didn't move. She looked at the document, then at the clerk. "My dad always signs his full middle initial," she said politely. "That's not it." The clerk's fingers paused over the keyboard. Tricia laughed too loudly. "Sweetheart, this is adult stuff." "But it's Dad's account," Emma replied, calm and clear. "And that's not his signature." The clerk straightened. "Ma'am, I'm going to need to halt this transaction." Tricia's face flushed. "This is ridiculous." "It's protocol," the clerk said. "We'll need both account holders present." Emma tilted her head, curious. "Dad isn't here. That's why you tried to do it without him, right?" The words weren't accusatory. They were innocent, observational. The clerk slid the document back. "I'm sorry. I can't proceed." Tricia grabbed the folder, hand shaking now. "Fine. Forget it." She turned and walked out, heels clicking too fast, Emma trailing behind her. From my screen, I watched Tricia's composure collapse the moment they reached the parking lot. She slammed the car door, screamed once, short, sharp, and then froze when she realized Emma was watching. Emma opened the passenger door calmly and got in. She didn't say a word. That night, Tricia called me. "I went to the bank," she said, trying to sound casual. "There was a misunderstanding." "I heard," I replied. Silence. "You didn't tell me Emma was with you," I added. "She followed me," Tricia snapped. "She embarrassed me." "No," I said evenly. "She told the truth." "You're manipulating her," Tricia accused. "Turning her against me." I leaned back in my chair. "You don't need my help with that." She hung up on me. The surveillance continued. Attempts to reach Alex. Attempts to access accounts. Attempts to regain control. Each one failed quietly. Each one tightened the net. And through it all, Tricia believed she was still ahead, still clever, still capable of fixing things if she just moved faster, pushed harder, lied better. She believed the separation had weakened me. She believed the house was hers again. She believed she was winning. And Emma, silent, observant, precise, had stopped her without raising her voice, without making an accusation, without anyone realizing they'd just watched a lie collapse in public. Exactly as planned. Chapter 8, The Darker Plan. The first sign wasn't dramatic. It never is. It was a browser tab Emma didn't recognize. She found it late Sunday evening, sitting cross-legged on the floor of her room with my old laptop balanced on her knees. The device was synced to the house network, something Tricia had never bothered to change. Convenience breeds oversight. Emma noticed everything. She'd been tracing patterns the way I'd taught her, quietly, patiently, without expectation of comfort. When something didn't fit, she didn't panic. She looked closer. The tab title was generic. Estate Planning Overview. Emma clicked it. She didn't gasp. She didn't rush downstairs. She read. Another tab sat beside it. Accidental Death Insurance Payout Timeline. Then another. Emergency Medical Authority Spouse. Emma sat very still. Down the hall, Tricia's door was closed. Music played softly. The house felt normal. Safe. That was the most dangerous part. Emma opened the browsing history. Dates lined up. Weeks back. Searches repeated with slight variations, like someone refining a question. How long after death before assets are released? Can spouse override next of kin medical decisions? Life insurance payout contested. How to avoid delays, common accidental deaths, not investigated. Emma's throat tightened, but only for a second. She grabbed her notebook and began writing. When she knocked on my apartment door later that night, I knew something had shifted before she spoke. She didn't ask to come in. She walked past me and sat at the small table, spreading papers out with methodical precision. "You need to see this," she said. I locked the door behind her. She slid the laptop toward me, already open to a browser history page. "This is Mom's," she said. I verified the user profile. I scanned the screen. My stomach dropped, slow and heavy. Insurance. Death. Authority. Assets. I looked at Emma. "How long?" "Over a month," she replied. "Before the separation. Before Alex vanished. Before the money came back. Before everything I thought was the worst of it." I scrolled further. "Dad," Emma said quietly. She wasn't planning to run away with him. I stopped scrolling. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She was planning to replace you," Emma said. The words landed with surgical precision. I leaned back, breath controlled, pulse steady only because training took over. "Explain." Emma pointed to her notes. The college fund was step one. Liquid cash that wouldn't raise alarms if she justified it as family use. She flipped a page. Step two was getting you isolated. Separation. You moving out. Less witnesses. Less scrutiny. Another page. Step three was an accident. I stared at the wall for a long moment. "What kind of accident?" I asked. Emma swallowed. She searched hiking injuries. Falls. Construction site incidents. I let out a slow breath. "She knows my routines." "Yes," Emma said. "And she knows you don't complain about pain." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them again. "What about the insurance?" Emma tapped the screen. She was checking payout amounts. "How fast they clear? What delays them?" "Emma," I said carefully, "did she ever talk about killing you?" She finished. I nodded. Emma shook her head. "Not directly. She talked about if something happened, about how fragile people really are, about how no one questions accidents when a man works too hard." My jaw tightened. "She also checked emergency authority," Emma added. "Who can make medical decisions if you're unconscious?" I sat forward. "And she can," Emma said, "as your spouse." Silence filled the room, thick and suffocating. "She searched private medical facilities," Emma continued. "Places where records are easier to control, where family access can be limited." I looked at my daughter, 12 years old, laying out a murder-adjacent plan with the calm of an analyst, and felt something deep inside me fracture. Not fear, recognition. "This wasn't about Alex," I said slowly. Emma shook her head. "He was a tool, a distraction, and a fallback." I rubbed my temples. "So the plan was what?" Emma didn't hesitate. "Drain the trust. Create financial stress you couldn't immediately see. Separate so she had space. Then wait for an accident." "And Emma?" I asked quietly. She met my eyes. She assumed I'd be too young to understand, or too scared to speak. I exhaled slowly. "She underestimated you." "Yes," Emma said. "And you?" I stood and paced the room, every step measured. My mind reconstructed the timeline automatically. Business trips, hiking weekends, late-night drives to job sites. Opportunities I never questioned because I trusted the woman at home. This wasn't betrayal born of passion. It was architecture. "How sure are you?" I asked. Emma slid one last sheet across the table. Highlighted text. A search query circled in red. How to stage accidental fall. Insurance investigation timeline. I stopped breathing for a second. "She didn't click the result," Emma said. "She just searched it." "That's enough," I replied. I sat down hard. All this time, I've been angry, calculating, controlled. But anger assumes impulse. This wasn't impulse. This was design. "You did the right thing," I said quietly. Emma nodded. "I know. Did you tell anyone else?" I asked. "No," she said. "Only you." "Good." I closed the laptop and looked at her. "From now on, you don't investigate alone." "I wasn't alone," she replied gently. "I had your rules." I almost smiled. "Listen to me," I said. "What you uncovered changes everything." Emma nodded. "That's why I brought it now." I stood and walked to the window, staring out at the dark street below. Cars passed. People lived. Normalcy continued, oblivious. Behind me, Emma gathered her papers, neat as always. "Dad," she said. "Yes." "She's not done," Emma said. "Not yet." I turned back. "Why do you say that?" Because plans like this don't disappear, she replied. They adapt. I studied her face. No fear, no drama, just certainty. You're right, I said. I felt it settle fully then, cold and undeniable. This was never about an affair, never about money, never about escape. It was about removal. And the realization hit with a weight heavier than any betrayal I'd faced in combat or business. This was never just betrayal, it was premeditation. Chapter 9, The Fake Accident. The plan was simple. Appear unpredictable, appear vulnerable, but never actually be either. Emma and I left the city early Saturday morning, backpacks light, gear packed for authenticity rather than comfort. A small tent, first aid kit, food for 2 days. No phones on, except one, hidden and ready. She walked beside me on the narrow trail leading into the canyon. The sun was just rising, streaking gold across the rocky cliffs. The air smelled of pine and dust. Perfect. You nervous? I asked. Emma shook her head. Calm as ever. Not really. Focused. I smiled just slightly. Good. Remember, this isn't a stunt. Every detail counts. Already counted, she replied. The phone, the logs, the backup call recordings. Everything. We hiked further, deeper into the canyon, until the cliffside opened before us, a vertical drop, jagged rocks below, a few sparse trees clinging to the ledge. Perfect, I murmured. Emma set her phone on a flat rock, dialed a number, and spoke calmly into it, her voice controlled, believable. Mom, she said, panicked. Dad slipped. He's unconscious. I don't know what to do. I barely breathed. My arm was over the edge, pretending a half fall, my body rigid but safe. On the line, Trisha's voice didn't waver with concern at first. There was calculation behind it, a split-second delay. Unconscious? She asked. What happened? He tripped over a rock. Emma continued, voice trembling just enough to sell it. I tried to catch him. He's bleeding. I don't think he's breathing properly. Please help. I watched Emma's fingers tighten around the phone. Every detail she added, every pause, was rehearsed. I'm calling the rescue team now. Trisha exclaimed. Relief, then urgency. But as she spoke, I could hear other movements, clicking keys, rapid typing. Banks first, she muttered. Not aloud, but audibly enough that Emma repeated it back in her notes later. Liquidate accounts. Pull cash. Prepare transfers. I raised an eyebrow, though Emma didn't notice. I've already called the rescue. Trisha continued, clearly multitasking. Hospitals. Emergency clinics. Insurance agents. Lawyers. Someone has to control the medical decisions if he's unconscious. Emma jotted down everything. She's not panicking, she whispered later. She's executing. I lower myself slowly to the ground, keeping the illusion. Blood-red makeup carefully applied to my forearm for realism. A shallow cut along the cheekbone. Dirt smudges to simulate a fall. Emma knelt beside me, voice shaking as she spoke into the phone. Mom, hurry, please. He's not moving. I think he's dead. Trisha's voice jumped an octave. Dead? No. Don't. Stay calm, Emma. I'm handling it. I'll handle everything. I could hear her pull papers from drawers, click open spreadsheets, open encrypted emails. Emma's eyes were wide, but she was composed. She's trying to control everything, I whispered when she ended the call. Yes, I said. Exactly what she would do. We packed our fake injuries back into the story. Fake bandages, improvised splints. Every scar, every bruise, positioned for maximum authenticity. The second call came 20 minutes later. Emma dialed again, crying slightly this time, convincing in her tone. Mom, he's getting worse. Please, we need help. Trisha's response was rapid fire. I'm activating transfers. Call the private clinic. Emergency authorization. Alert Nick's office. Yes, the lawyer. I clenched my fists, silently impressed. She had moved straight from emotional calculation to logistics and asset protection. Her first instinct wasn't concern, it was control. Emma documented everything. Timestamped screenshots, transcribed dialogue, recorded audio from the speakerphone. Everything lined up for legal purposes later. She's thinking 2 steps ahead, Emma whispered. This isn't panic. This is preparation. She's practicing what she researched. Exactly. I crawled slightly closer to the cliff's edge, careful not to go beyond safe ground. Emma panicked audibly on the phone again. Mom, he's losing consciousness. I think he hit his head on the rocks. And as expected, Trisha's response wasn't call an ambulance. It was secure finances. Contact Nick. Notify banks. Prepare trust accounts. Mobilize backup resources. I'll be the decision maker. I stood slowly, brushing off dirt, making it look like I was disoriented. Emma ended the call, scribbling final notes in her notebook. We paused. The canyon was silent, except for the wind and distant bird calls. The stage panic had played out perfectly. You okay? I asked her, crouching beside her. Emma nodded. Better than okay. I learned everything we needed. Everything. I pressed. Yes, she said. She reacted exactly like the plan we uncovered. She's ready to exploit this if it were real. I nodded. The weight of her observation pressed on me. Trisha hadn't merely betrayed us with money and infidelity. She had crafted contingencies. Every scenario anticipated. Every emergency accounted for. We packed up and started the descent, careful to remove any evidence of our setup. Dirt wiped off. Bandages folded. Rocks returned to their original positions. Every movement silent, methodical, tactical, like the training I had instilled in her. Back in the apartment, Emma began organizing her logs. Time of call, duration, reaction, financial response, legal maneuvering, she murmured. I watched her amazed. 12 years old, yet she treated this like a professional operation, not a child's game. Dad, she said finally, looking up, I think we've got enough for the next step. I nodded. We do, and we'll move carefully. But now we know. Her face was serious. She's not emotional. She's calculating. Every move is about control. Everything we saw before was just rehearsal. Exactly. I leaned back, letting her take the lead in organizing the evidence. The stakes are higher than we imagined. Emma didn't blink. I know, but we can manage it. Step by step. She had already begun drafting timelines, labeling each call, every decision, every move Trisha had made. The network of her manipulations stretched wide, but Emma was mapping it all out. I smiled faintly. Your mother thinks she can act without consequence. Emma looked at me, calm, measured, already thinking 3 steps ahead. She's wrong. And that's when I realized the full scope. Not just betrayal, theft, or infidelity, but preparation for control, exploitation, and manipulation. We spent the night reviewing the logs, photographs, screenshots, and call recordings. Emma's organization turned a chaotic chain of events into a readable, actionable strategy. Every potential move Trisha could make had been documented. By morning, the fake accident exercise had yielded more than confirmation of her behavior. It gave us proof, timing, and the evidence trail that would ensure she could be contained. We didn't celebrate. We didn't relax. But the confidence in Emma's voice, the way she traced every line, every call, every bank transfer, told me everything. We were no longer reacting. We were preparing. And Trisha, completely unaware, had just walked into our trap. Every call she made, every bank transaction she initiated, every lawyer she contacted, all recorded, time-stamped, and backed up. The day ended with us reviewing each step, verifying everything Emma had captured. Every action of Trisha's during the stage crisis was documented. We had proof. Complete proof. I looked at my daughter, seated cross-legged on the floor amidst notebooks and devices, and realized she had become more than just my child. She was my partner in strategy, my analyst, my tactical advantage. Trisha had shown her true self. Panic-free, calculating, ruthless. And we had caught it all. Every word, every action, every move. All of it documented. Chapter 10, The Screams. The kitchen smelled of fresh basil and burnt toast, a faint reminder that Trisha still tried to maintain normalcy. She moved quickly, efficiently, like a general preparing for battle. Envelopes were stacked, pens uncapped, forms ready. Every surface of the granite countertop, the one I had personally installed years ago, was covered with papers she thought would secure her escape. Emma watched from the doorway, notebook in hand, eyes calm. She hadn't spoken since we arrived, silently cataloging everything. "Mom," Emma said finally, voice soft. "Are you sure that's the right signature?" Tricia froze, hand poised over a document. "It is," she said, forcing certainty into her tone. "You don't understand, Emma. Adults handle these things differently." Emma tilted her head, almost innocently. "I thought Dad always signed his middle initial." "You're missing it here." Tricia's jaw tightened. She stared at Emma for a fraction of a second, realizing the child had noticed, and then pushed the observation aside. "Details, darling. Details don't matter." I stepped into the room, calm, hands in my pockets, expression neutral. "I think you should slow down," I said. Tricia whirled toward me, eyes sharp. "Marshall, I thought you were gone." I said, voice even. "For appearances." Her lips pressed into a thin line. "You can't stop what I'm doing." I smiled faintly, not out of humor, but certainty. "I already have." Emma didn't look at either of us. She simply began pressing buttons on her phone, triggering the live feeds we had installed in advance. Every camera angle, every audio recording, every timestamped motion sensor was ready. Tricia glanced around, suspicion flickering. "Emma, what?" I cut her off. "She's helping me." "You underestimated her." As usual. Her eyes darted nervously. "I don't know what you mean." "You've been forging signatures, coordinating transfers, attempting insurance fraud," I said slowly, each word measured. "All of it is on video. All of it has been recorded. All of it is illegal." Tricia laughed, sharp and defensive. "Illegal? You think this is illegal?" "You don't understand." A loud knock interrupted her. "Marshal Ramsey," a firm voice called from the door. "We have a court order here." I nodded to Emma, who pressed another button. From every angle, discreetly hidden speakers relayed the voices of uniformed officers and lawyers outside the door. Tricia froze. Her hands hovered over the documents. You can't do this," she yelled. "Watch," I said, "or listen. Your choice." The front door burst open. Police in uniforms, 2 lawyers carrying thick folders, and Omar trailing behind. Nick Gilbert was already on speaker, voice authoritative, cutting through the tension. "Tricia Ramsey, you are under arrest for attempted fraud, forgery, and conspiracy," an officer said firmly. She dropped the papers, some sliding to the floor. She backed up into the countertop, knocking over a vase. Flowers tumbled, water spilling across the granite. "Stop this," she screamed. "You have no idea what you're doing." Nick stepped forward calmly. "Ma'am, the law is very clear. We have evidence. You're being observed committing crimes in real time." Tricia's hands went to her hair, pulling roughly at the strands. "This is a mistake, a misunderstanding." Omar moved to secure the documents. "The cameras tell a different story," he said, holding up a tablet, displaying live footage of her attempts to forge signatures and coordinate transfers. Tricia's voice rose, nearly shrill now. That's not real. You can't prove anything." Emma, standing quietly beside me, flipped open her notebook. "It's all real," she said calmly. "Every call, every transfer, every step. I documented it." Tricia spun toward her. You're helping him?" Emma shrugged, eyes steady. "I helped make sure no one got hurt, and that you couldn't get away with it." Tricia's gaze darted between us, rage and fear mingling. "You think this will ruin me?" "You can't." A police officer gently but firmly grasped her arm. "Ma'am, please come with us." "No," she screamed, wrenching free. "I didn't do anything wrong. You don't understand." I watched, impassive, as she struggled against the officer. Emma's notebook lay open, pages filled with meticulous logs, timestamps, call records, and screenshots. Every single move Tricia made in that kitchen was documented, leaving no room for manipulation. "Step aside, ma'am," the officer said. She screamed again, louder this time, the sound echoing through the house. It was guttural, raw, the culmination of weeks of planning collapsing in front of her. "I'm telling you, this is a mistake," she yelled. "You think you're smart, Marshall, but—" Emma looked up, expression calm. "I'm smarter than anyone you thought you could fool," she said. Her words hung in the air. Tricia froze mid-struggle, realization dawning. Every step, every scheme, every calculation she had made, all of it had been anticipated, recorded. Documented. Countered. The officers guided her out of the kitchen. She twisted, trying to snatch documents or plead for their return, but Omar had already secured everything. Nick stepped to my side. All accounts are frozen. Assets secured. She can't touch anything now. Emma closed her notebook. And the recordings, every conversation, every attempt at fraud, every move to manipulate Dad or me. Everything is saved. Trisha's screams faded as she was led down the hallway, the sound distant but chilling. Emma and I stood in the kitchen, silent. I walked over and picked up the folder she had tried to use, examining the documents she thought would secure her freedom. They were neat, organized, and carefully crafted, but in the end, useless. She believed she was untouchable, I said quietly. Emma nodded. She thought she could manipulate, control, and escape. But she didn't account for us. I looked at her, truly looked at her. 12 years old. Yet every movement, every observation, every backup she had orchestrated rivaled the work of seasoned investigators. You already handled it, I said. Emma smiled faintly. From the beginning, she replied. I felt a weight lift, heavy months of suspicion, anger, and betrayal replaced by certainty. The wife who had plotted to drain accounts, manipulate her family, and exploit circumstances was now powerless. The daughter who had observed quietly, prepared methodically, and executed flawlessly stood beside me, calm and unwavering. The kitchen, once the site of her scheming, now felt like a stage cleared of tension. The sunlight streamed through the windows, catching on the granite countertops, gleaming like evidence of victory. Omar and Nick began cataloging the seized documents. Police officers continued processing the scene, taking statements and photographing everything. I poured a glass of water from the tap Trisha had used countless times, setting it down in front of Emma. She accepted it with a quiet nod, never losing her composure. I knew she was dangerous, I said, but I didn't know she was that organized. Emma shrugged. I knew she would try. That's why I recorded, backed up, and planned. I had to make sure no one got hurt, and that she couldn't get away with it. I swallowed hard, pride and relief mixing. You did more than that. You protected all of us, smarter than anyone thought possible. She looked at me, serious but unafraid. I just handled it. The word lingered in the room. Simple, defiant, perfectly accurate. Outside, the sound of sirens and Trisha's fading screams filled the air. Inside, certainty settled like a stone in my chest. The wife who had betrayed and schemed was gone. The money was safe. Emma was safe. I was safe. And through it all, one undeniable truth remained. Emma had been 3 steps ahead from the very beginning. She had already handled it.